What up, peeps? Another installment of today's word of the day. So, today is going to be brought to you by James chapter 3, verses 2 to 6. It says, "Indeed, we all make mistakes. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every other way. We can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of putting a small bit in its mouth. And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And among all parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is on fire by hell itself." So there is so much to comment on in this. This is a very heavy imagery filled passage by James, and I love it as a person who is exploring poetry more and just the arts, and like this spoke to me in a lot of ways. Is very interesting. All the thoughts that came into my head as I was thinking about this. So let's discuss, shall we? So let's start with verse 2. Verse 2 says, "We all fail." This is actually I was reading from the New Living Translation before. This is the Passion Translation. I liked how it rephrased verse 2. It says, "We fail in many areas, but especially with our words. Yet, if we're able to bridle the words we say, we are powerful enough to control ourselves in every way. And that means our character is mature and fully developed." So at first when I read this, I was just like, so it's our words that are powerful enough to control us in every way. Like my first thought was, no, it's our thoughts that are that powerful and allow ourselves to be controlled in the way that we allow ourselves to be. But then when I thought about it, I was like, it's not the thoughts themselves that controls us. It's what we say to ourselves when the thoughts come, right? Because, for example, if like a random thought just came into my head, that was like, "Oh, you're ugly," and if I like hear that thought and I'm like, no, I know I'm not ugly, so I don't agree with that, I just discard the thought. But if I really am insecure about myself and my looks, and I think that I really am ugly, and then I start repeating to myself that I am ugly, that's when I start to steer myself in a different direction and just head myself down a path of destruction and insecurity by keep repeating what I heard first, that thought. So I was just like, it really is our thoughts that starts to light this fire that this little excerpt in James 3 talks about. And reading back the verse again from this translation, it says that if we learn to control our tongues, it shows it means our character is mature and fully developed. I thought that was also an interesting point and reminder that there's more than one way to be mature, and emotionally mature is one of the ways that as believers we should be as well, emotionally and mentally mature. It's not like, I feel like we always tend to focus on outward spiritual stuff like praying, fasting, and all those things are good and necessary as well, but our words and our self-talk is just as important, which we'll see as we dive into this next set of verses. So this is verses 3 to 5. It says, "We can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of a small bit in its mouth, and a small rudder makes a ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire." So I thought this imagery really illustrates the power of the tongue because James parallels I guess like the power of a tongue with things like a horse being steered by a bridle and then a ship being steered by a rudder. Horses and ships, those are representations of things that we think mighty and powerful in this world. But it doesn't matter how powerful and how much prowess and physical strength you have as a person. If you allow your tongue to be uncontrolled and a destructive thing, it really doesn't matter how much physical strength you have. I wrote that your physical prowess and strength or stature are at the mercy of something as small as your tongue, which has the ability to make you believe that you're not strong and courageous or any of those things, right? And then I put in bold, you're only as strong as your self-talk. What? Like, for real, that just hit me. You're only as strong as your self-talk. I remember a time, many times, the reasons why I would even lose races is because I already talked myself out that I would lose. I'm not a runner, although everybody assumes I am because they see my muscles and they think I'm a sprinter. I'm not. Okay? But for high school, I would run for my house. So in Trinidad and Tobago, we have different houses that the high school is split into. Yes, like Harry Potter for all those who are Harry Potter fans out there. I'm not, but I'm just saying the parallel of what a house is. You're divided into these houses and you compete against each other on sports day. And so I would be running for my house, and at the starting line, we are all ready to go. We're just waiting for the gun to go. And in my mind, I already told myself that everybody is going to start before me and I'm going to lose. And every time I would delay my start, the gun would go off or the whistle, whatever, and I am there still frozen at the starting line because I told myself I was going to start late. It's not because I couldn't start on. I heard when the whistle blew, but I already talked myself out and psyched myself out so much that I was going to do it that I actually did it. I lost the race before it was even started because of what I told myself was going to happen and that I would lose. And I think I ended up coming second. Oh, did I ever win a sprint in high school? No, I think I really just always came second because I would always late start because of what I told myself before. So it's true, you're only as strong as your self-talk. I mean, people could tell you things and people could tell me I'm great and all of that stuff, but if I don't believe it, it's not going to matter. So, yeah. So that was good. And then verse 6, it says, among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole wheel of wickedness corrupting the entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. I just had to pause there for a while. When I read that, I was like, okay, the imagery in here is just like, I was just taken aback. Love it though, because so what I wrote here is that this imagery rocked me. First of all, in that first sentence, it says the tongue is a flame of fire. Your tongue itself is the flame of fire that will start everything, right? And this fire that James is describing is obviously a destructive one that is uncontrolled and just destroys everything in its path, right? So your tongue has the ability to set your whole life on fire. And then it really shook me because it made me realize that the destructive fires, metaphorically, that are raging in my life are fires that originated from me and my tongue, which is the flame, right? And so it just like really kind of humbled me and sobered me to do a self-assessment of, okay, what am I saying to myself that is allowing fires to keep raging in my mind? And then the part where it says that the tongue is set on fire by hell itself. By hell itself? Wow. And I wrote, whenever I engage in destructive self-talk, either out loud or just to myself in my mind, what I'm literally doing is allowing hell to burn my life down. And then I started thinking on like the scientific side. It's so interesting, this like stage of life I'm going through right now, because I'm a scientist, and but I'm also like exploring this creative will now too. So I'm always linking the creative with the scientific. But like to me, it just goes to show like how there's this whole science versus God debate, and people think that they're mutually exclusive, when I think like they're actually intersect. Like the more and more I learn about science, the more that it proves the existence of God to me, and how I see how God, he created science, and how just everything, it could be linked spiritually and scientifically. Anyway, so it got me thinking, like, what are the three elements that fire needs to start, right, or to burn? So these are the three things that fire needs: heat, fuel, and oxygen, right? And so this is how I parallel those three elements poetically or metaphorically. So I said we can't stop the heat, because as David said, it comes from hell itself. Devil is a liar, he would always be here. I can't stop him from bringing the heat. He'll always have his fiery arrows to throw, can't stop that. Okay. To an extent, we could regulate the oxygen that we breathe in, and I liken the oxygen to, like the things that we breathe in and out that we can't see, which are thoughts, right? So to an extent, we could regulate what thoughts sit in our mind. We can't necessarily just, not have anything to think about, and the devil is always going to throw thoughts. But like I said, we could regulate what we allow to really sit in there. So to an extent, we could kind of regulate the oxygen, the thoughts. But what we have absolute control over is the third thing, and what is, in my opinion, is the most important element, which is the fuel. What is the fuel? The thoughts that we, rather the speech that we speak to ourselves and to others. The self-talk, right? So, because we could have the oxygen, we could have the heat, but if there's no material for those two things to catch a fire on, then there's no fire. So we have the ability to control the fuel, the self-talk, the things that we speak to ourselves and to others. And how fast a fire is caught is really dependent on what type of material that is trying to be lit on, because there are, as we know, flammable and non-flammable substances. What is an example of a non-flammable substance? The most obvious one is water, which quenches the fire, right? So, and then it just made me think again, like metaphorically speaking, like Jesus is referred to as the well of living water. And so if we allow ourselves to fill our minds, to fill ourselves with him, with who is the source of living water, then when a fire tries to catch itself, or like begin to ignite in our minds, it would be instantly quenched. When the devil tries to when he brings the heat and the oxygen, it'll be met with water, and there would not even be a fire started at all. So yeah, that's why it's so important, again, to be reading the word and really being aware and conscious of, again, the words that you speak to yourself and to others. So That is the word of the day. Again, from James chapter 3, verses 2 to 6. And I'll leave you off with the punchline again of you are only as strong as your self-talk.